Global Climate Policy Conference is a flagship climate policy conference designed by the Climate Strategies Network to bring together researchers, policymakers, practitioners, and businesses to think about implementable, cutting-edge, innovative research solutions that can help to advance climate action all over the world.
We feel it is really important to develop capacity of the research community in Africa in particular, and we will be looking to work more closely with African researchers in the future.
It happens that Dr. Kikwete, His Excellency, is someone who has been engaged at the very highest level in Africa in trying to understand what are the implications of climate change to Africa and what we need to do to tackle the problem. But now he needs to be a climate ambassador, trying to push that idea through to the current government, not only in Tanzania, but across Africa.
Climate change is an issue that gets to the very core of our relationship as human beings on the one hand and the planet on the other. No country, no nation can tackle climate change alone. This is truly a global issue, and I'm happy to see such a diverse group of concerned global citizens gather to deliberate just what can be done, at least in this part of the world.
I like to say you can free your mind and you can say now, instead of creating certified emission reductions, we could create adaptation benefit units. And these units don't need to be fungible, which means they don't need to be denominated in the same parameters, the same units. You can have a cook stove project that delivers adaptation benefit units in the form of a household using a clean cook stove for a year. That could be an adaptation benefit unit, and that might cost $5. You could have another adaptation benefit unit which is augmenting and supporting flood defense mechanisms to make them resilient and resistant to a 100-year flood. And that might cost $5 million to protect 1,000 hectares of farmland and 3 villages.
I've seen that for effective climate change response, there's need for a well-informed and responsible citizenry. And this can only be effected through education. Given that the impacts of climate change are intergenerational, learners, especially the youth, which comprises the majority of the population, they should be equipped with essential knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes towards climate change so that they are able to deal with current and future climate change impacts. Tertiary institutions should also make use of indigenous knowledge system from the community, work with the community, work with people.
If your house is on fire, you do not wait for somebody to help you put it out. One of the things that needs to be done is to ensure that Africans are able to articulate robust INDCs, that is their intended nationally determined contributions to climate change, making sure that these are not rushed, but that these are robust in terms of the adequacy, in terms of concrete action plans that we require to implement them, in terms of costing the activities, in terms of making sure that there is capacity on the ground to implement those.
Capacity building is accepted as a key ingredient for delivering development, but the key problem is lack of financing and lack of commitment to financing capacity development initiatives. We want to see actually local initiatives to supply capacity services, to develop the capacities of beneficiaries who need this capacity. But the main challenge is how the government program, the government budget itself could be used to finance more initiatives in capacity building. That's the biggest issue. And usually what happens is that we have some kind of research that is available. There are evidence, there are advocates, They think that if a think tank has developed a research product and make recommendations, then it could find its way easily to the government systems.
But there is also a huge gap in capacity that needs to be built all through the chain, from policy making to climate modeling to design to monitoring to implementation to assessment to evaluation to climate negotiation, impact assessment, etc., etc. There is critical capacity need gap in Africa.
It is important for each one of us to explore what we can do which can be transformational in our own economies. Transformational means that whatever you do, change a light bulb, make houses resistant to cyclones, make sure that every light bulb is changed, make sure that every house is made resilient to cyclones. That's transformation, that we're able to change the entire structure in society. We needed hooks which brought together development actions and climate actions.
There are certain things one can do to make the journey a little bit easier. The first one is really have some agreement on objectives. Where is it you really want to go? Second one is to have some foundational things in place like data and so on, so that one is able to get a good feeling of where we are today. And then the third one is really to say, okay, then how do we move forward?
Your 6 bullet points, please.
We have learned that we have to engage the youth more, because the youth are basically they are our future leaders, and the decisions we take today will affect them the most in the end. To put in practice actually and identify who really needs what, where and when. But also education for the grassroots, how to access the different opportunities we have for climate finance mechanisms.
There's need for formulation of specific capacity building needs of each country. And there's need for Africa to be on the lookout, for instance, in terms of ensuring that there are monitoring, review and verification frameworks that can enable the continent to benefit from the Paris Agreement.
Next, we looked at and said that it is very important to include the primary stakeholders in the policies and laws, as they are not only the problem in our countries, but they're also solution providers. And we need to do that through education. If you're telling a villager not to use specific type of material to cook, whether it is firewood or charcoal, and tell them to use gas cooker or electric cooker, but you have not financially enabled them to use the alternative.
This is one of the reasons why Climate Strategies was set up originally. It was to make sure that the research community, academics, people who work in universities, talk to people who are in policy and people who are in government and provide evidence for sound decision making at the right time.
We also need to do how to do our job better, how to really transform what we manage to negotiate into concrete action. And we are vectors of changes. You know, it's very difficult to bring the whole world into a room, but, you know, it's really going to be up to us to go around. You know, there were a few representatives from the grassroots community, from the research community, from policymakers. So each one of us leaving this room have to think about what they can do, how they're going to pursue research.
So this platform that we have these last 2 days helps in beginning to crystallize those ideas in terms of the challenges but also the opportunities. But no one platform can do it alone. There needs to be stronger engagement also with the research community to continue to articulate what are the research gap needs, what are the policy needs, and how can we best mobilize resources both domestically and internationally to address the challenge. If we do that, in the next 5 years, I can assure you that although we may not have arrived, we would have made some appreciable progress.